And we're live.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
What's going on, everybody?
What's up, everybody?
Hey.
We have Mr. Alan Bell on tonight. Super
Yes.
excited to have him on. Big bass fisherman out in Texas. So we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff tonight. Super excited to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Oh,
Yes,
you
sir.
bet.
Thank you.
So so we've got all the people in the chat. Remember, guys, if you have questions, hit us up
Yes.
in there, and we'll make sure to answer them.
So, Alan, if you
So-
don't mind me asking, I'll get this one out the way. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 66. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. So I'm like, ooh. And you've been fishing the whole way?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And been throwing big baits since about 2003 or 4, maybe. So about 20 years.
Okay.
Okay.
So what kind of made you get into the big baits? I mean, that's kind of a strange route to take,
Yeah, way back, I saw a real early video of Butch Brown, and it was a real grainy, almost a nighttime deal where he catches, some double-digit fish on a big trout bait. And he must have had it on a stinger hook or something like that back then, because the fish is here, the hook is here, and the bait's over here. And I was like, let me get it on. And bait, the bait's not where the hook is. I'm going, and it was real grainy, and it was kind of dark, and I'm going, what's going on here? And so I started, just doing internet research, and kind of got clued into some of the stuff that was going on in California. And there are trout plants in Texas, but they put them in little ponds and little lakes where people can just go in and catch them and take them home and eat them. I mean, they don't put them anywhere for forage or to populate, because it gets too hot here and the fish can't hold over. But I saw him catch that fish, and I went, man. And and I've fished a lot around Central Texas, and actually had a chance to go down to Mexico a few times way back and fish Lake Guerrero. And we used to throw really big crankbaits down there, and really big worms, 12 and 13-inch worms. And so I found, just playing around on the internet, I found calfishing.com and found with Rob Baloney, and I don't know if I got Rob's last name right, but it was kind of the go-to for swim bait fishing. And there was a bunch of guys out there doing it, but literally in Texas, there might have been a couple guys back then. And I mean, I was the only one locally that I knew that was trying to do it. And the first bait that I bought was called the Mega Bait Charlie. Mega Bait.
Okay.
Yeah, Mega Bait Charlie. That looked like, like RoboCop meets fishing lure, because it had this metal skeleton on the inside of it, and it had this funky tail like an accordion, and it was a trout pattern. And I want to say it was 6 inches long, and it felt so big. And I did what probably a lot of swim bait fishermen did back then, is I threw it on, my grass rod, and I threw it on a frog rod. And so it took me a while to go, man, I need to get a swim bait rod. And so, and kind of what really got me going was they had a kind of a want ad thing on Rob's site, and this guy put his whole swim bait collection up for sale because he was having back problems or something like that, and couldn't fish out of a boat anymore. And so for $700, I got his entire collection. And it was 3 rods, Okuma big bait specials, a couple reels, a couple, about 3 or 4 316 hard baits, a bunch of mission fish, some slammers. And I mean, today that stuff would cost you thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got it for $700, and it came in this big box. And I'm going, man, I got to throw that. And I got to throw that. And that's when I really got into, the mission fish and hard baits and slammers, and it kind of took off from there. And I mean, just for Jermaine, man, once you hook that first big fish, or first fish for that matter, I mean, the first Hud fish that I caught was about 6 feet away from the boat, and I saw it come up and hit it. And there's no explaining to it. I mean, maybe like musky fishermen and stuff like that could explain it, but I mean, it is like a dog on a bone where it comes up and it tries to take it away from you.
Mhm.
And I'm reeling that thing in right below this. I don't know how to fish it. I mean, nobody around here had them. I mean, nobody even knew what they were. So I'm throwing it like a spinnerbait and reeling it in under the surface. And I see this fish swimming right next to it. And all of a sudden the fish turns and hits the head.
Oh man.
And I was hooked, man. It was, and you'll catch some, I've caught some small fish. You catch 2 and 3 pound fish on that stuff, but and then I've taken out guys that are, hardcore conventional fishermen. And I started, when I was a conventional fisherman, I started a Wednesday night kind of working man's tournament after work. We'd fish from, 6:30 to 10, I think is what it was. And we would meet out on the lake, and I'd take everybody's money. Then we'd meet at the same spot and, to see what, and I would take guys out once I started throwing big baits, and, I'd be slow rolling one in, and I'd tell my buddy, I say, hey, look behind that. And he'd see, a 7 or 8 pound fish right behind it. And it's like, oh my God. It's like, yeah, that happens. We might not ever catch them, but we'll see them. And it's even worse now with, I put new electronics on my boat last year. So, I upgraded everything, and I'm running the Lowrance product. So I've got active target and stuff like that. And, it's a lake that I've fished, for 20 plus years. And I'm seeing fish now that I never knew were there.
Really?
Because I'm seeing them on the active target. And
Nuts.
Lake Austin is known for all the docks. So it's, 26 miles, it varies from 200 yards wide to, maybe a mile, not even a mile wide. And it's got docks everywhere. And literally you go up to the dock, turn on the active target, shoot it under there. There's fish under there. I mean, almost every dock. Now they might not be bass, but there's areas that I always thought, well, this is dead water. I'm not going to fish there because it's dead water, and it's not dead water. I mean, there's fish swimming around.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
So, I mean, that's kind of how I got into it. And then I had conventional stuff on the deck, and I had the big bait stuff on the deck. And there was a point where I just said, okay, I'm taking the conventional stuff and I'm putting it in the closet. I've caught enough, Senko fish. I've caught enough 2 and 3 pound fish. Had enough perch bites. It's time to put that stuff away and just go try to catch the biggest fish in the lake. And I mean, that's what, and then the kind of over time around, 2012, 13, 14, there was probably half a dozen guys here in town that threw big baits, and we'd kind of meet and, talk about what everybody's doing, and, kind of sharing stories and stuff. And hardly time goes by that now that when I'm out on the lake, if I see somebody fishing, probably 25% of them, I'll look and see throwing a big bait. And, I probably know the guys. But, and it doesn't, it doesn't bother me that, somebody's fishing behind me, or somebody, I'm fishing behind somebody, because, they're throwing a jig, and, You know, and the way I rationalize it is I'm fishing for a different fish.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You know, I'm not fishing for the fish they're trying to catch. I'm fishing for the, you know, that one bite.
Yeah.
Uh, and you know, you go a long time. I mean, you know, I've had 13 trips and not catch a fish, but that's part of the deal. You know,
Yeah.
you know, you kind of lose confidence, and then you just like until you catch that fish, and it
Yeah,
kind of you know, reboots everything.
dude, it is horrible losing big fish and then
Yeah.
not having any bites. It's like the worst, because you
Yeah, it
don't know
makes
if you're
good
doing it
videos.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, it makes good videos because people, you know, oh, I do the same thing, and or you know, the reason why you lose the fish is, you know, you're reeling them one direction, and I've made the mistake a bunch of times. Is you reverse. You know,
Mhm.
you got them coming left to right, and you're running out of space up on the deck, so you decide to go back to the left. It's
Mhm.
like, no, man, just follow them around the boat. You know, keep them going one direction,
Yeah.
and you know, and sometimes you can't get to the net, so you boat flip them. And I got a buddy that's a hardcore conventional fisherman. He's a real good fisherman. We
Mhm.
were fishing out at Decker Lake, and I was on a depths uh, bull shooter bite, and it's on my YouTube channel.
Mhm.
And I was just killing them. And you know,
Oh,
this
yeah.
lake, if you catch something that's 6 pounds, it's a really good fish.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
I'm boat flipping, you know, 6 pounders, and my buddy's going crazy. He's going, no, 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 no. Let's get the net. I said, man, we don't need the net. I got a 25-pound line. You know, this ain't going nowhere. Uh,
Oh, man. That's
yeah, and
crazy.
then you know, Jeff from Arizona came over here to go fishing, and you know, nobody ever catches a big fish there. And he and Phoenix are on that lake, and they're not there for 2 hours, and they catch an 8.5. And it's like I've
Mm.
been fishing there all my life. I've never caught an 8.5 out of this lake. I mean, my big
Oh,
fish is
yeah.
six, you know,
Oh,
six
wow.
and a half. But I mean, they, you know, it's like, man, you're ruining it for me. You're ruining it for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. That's crazy. I kind of wanted to ask you about this. Would have been dying to ask you, how did you catch that 12 pounder this year? I
Um,
want to know the story behind this fish.
so
That's a good question.
it,
Yeah.
so the part of the lake, so the lake that I fish, like I said, Lake Austin's 26 miles long.
Hmm.
And so at one end, it's the Colorado River is what it is.
Hmm.
And there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 dams along the river. And so there's a different lake between every dam.
Mm.
Okay.
And so on the upper end of the lake is where the real cold water is because it's let out of a Lake Travis. The water comes out of the lake there like 80 feet down. And so it
Okay.
comes into the water typically, you know, very cold. Even when it was 110 degrees up here, you could go up there and there was still 70-degree water. And
Hmm.
so at the other end of the lake, you know, where the waters had a chance to, you know, to go the 26 miles and get exposed to the heat,
Mm.
at the lower end, it gets warmer quicker.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So the spawn will start on the lower end towards the end of January, early February. So that's when the big fish move up.
That's interesting.
Okay.
And so, and that's the thing about Lake Austin. You can go fish temperature. So you can say, okay, I want to go find 72 degrees, you know, at a certain
Hmm.
point of the year. So you can run up and down the lake and you can find that spot, you know, because you know
Hmm.
you read, you know, the old Bassmaster things like that. You know, it's like, you know, the fish's favorite location is 72 degrees and 8 feet deep.
Hmm.
So, you know, you would go find those areas and fish those areas. But so anyway, um, this end of the lake has fish that move up from, you know, those deeper depths onto these flats, and
Hmm.
there's a bunch of docks down there. And I was out there. This was in March 10th. So you know,
Okay.
pretty early, and there's a bunch of gizzard shad up there swimming around. So, and that's one of the big forage things around here
Mhm.
for the big bass around here is the gizzard shad, not the threadfin, the little guys. I mean, we're talking big gizzard shad.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, that kind of that size. You know, that's a battle
Yeah.
shad. Um, and so I had seen some of these fish swimming around, but no fish were really on beds yet. And you know, some people don't like bed fishing, and you know, I don't,
Mhm.
you know, I don't have any issue one way or the other as long as you don't keep whipping a fish. I mean, if you catch it on bed,
Yeah.
let it go, and you know, don't have your buddy catch it or something like that. I mean, that's dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I was seeing these fish come out after gizzard shad, and then the fish would go back under these docks. And so there's a marina down there at the lower end of the lake next to Mozart's, and Mozart's this coffee shop.
Mhm.
And those particular docks are floating docks. So they're up on
Okay.
pontoons. Some of the docks are anchored. They're on columns,
Mhm.
typically wood that are sunk in the bottom. But these
That's the
are,
majority of docks that we have here is
uh,
floating ones.
and it's, you know, you can't skip under a floating dock because, you know, there's no
Yeah.
place,
Yeah, there's nowhere to go.
but you can fit between the boats. And typically what I do is I go along the outside edges, you know, and um, oh, Matt, what was the video that came out with the guy throwing the HUDs? But he was always talking about, you know, throwing along the sides of the docks and then across the front of the docks, you know, and just kind of carving them up.
Mhm.
And so I'm throwing the battle shad, or I'm throwing the hinkle shad.
Okay.
And so this fish starts following me, you know, and it's kind of not interested. And this
Mhm.
was about a, you know, 6 or 7 pound fish. I'm saying, okay. And then I went by that first, and then I saw that fish, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to come back later. And so I went and fished another area, and then worked my way back. And then when I worked my way back, I saw that fish again, and the water's about 7 or 8 feet deep, and it was really clear, except for the area that I went through got all silted up. So it's like, okay, well, that's
Oh,
stupid.
yeah.
You know, because I went kind of through where I ought to be fishing, and I just silted it up. And
Ah.
then about 5 or 6 boat slips over, there's a guy working on a boat, and so he's churning up the bottom. And so now I've got a cloud in the water that is this area that I want to fish. And so I throw in there again, I bring the hinkle in, and right behind it, like 2 feet behind it, is you know, another fish, 6 or 7 pounds, something like that. And so I throw the Matt Lures bluegill, and I'm hopping it along the bottom. I throw the
Mhm.
battle shad, and I'm, you know, and I'm not getting bit. And so I pitch that tiger tube. I don't know if you guys
Mhm.
throw big tubes, but I mean, it's a 8 inch,
Never heard of.
and it kind of
Want to get one?
goes down
Yeah.
kind of like that. Um, so I pitch it into the cloud, and
Mhm.
then, you know, as we normally do, we're not paying attention because we're doing something else. And I look up and I see my line moving off, and I reel in. I set the hook, and I thought, well, okay, I got him. This is that, you know, that fish. And I'm about 8 or 9 feet away from the edge of this floating dock, and that fish starts digging to go under that dock. And I've lost
Mhm.
big fish under that dock before, and I thought, I cannot let that fish get under there. So I'm
Mhm.
pulling really hard, um, and that fish comes up, and I mean, his mouth is, you know, like this big, and
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
thinking that's not the same fish.
Yeah.
And corner of my eye, I look over the corner and I see where my net is, and I go, "There's no way I can get to that fish. There's no way I can get to the net without letting the fish get under the dock.
Yeah.
Because if I reach back, he's going
Mhm.
forward, and the fish has pulled the boat closer to the dock. So I've only got like 4 feet now between me and the dock.
Oh man.
So I reach down, I
This is
grab
crazy.
him the line, I grab him with one hand, and then I grab him with the other hand, and I pull him out with 2 hands. And 27 and a half inches long, with 12 pounds, 12 ounces.
Oh
It
man.
almost made me tear up. Oh man.
And so I put him in the live well. And of course, the first thing I do is, I call my buddies and say, I got a giant. No. So it kind of ruins their day until I tell them how big it is. And so I call 3 or 4 guys and say, I got a giant. And the first thing they say is, how big is it? I go, I haven't weighed it yet. And
That's insane.
so I get it. I weigh it, and this is like 30 minutes later. I've had it in the live wells. I've got the release me stuff in there to calm them down. And it was the Brecknell is bouncing between like 13 and 14 pounds, but I'm on the waves, so I'm kind of doing this. And so when I got back to my dock, I got up on the dock where it wasn't bouncing anymore, and that's when it came in at 12. And
Okay.
and I ended up releasing it there at my dock, and I kind of do that selfishly because a lot of times during the week I'll go down. My dock is part of a neighborhood park that my neighborhood has, and so I'll go down there with rods and stuff in the evening and just fish from the bank, hoping that I catch some of the fish that I released down there at the dock. The other thing that's about Lake Austin, it is a huge wake surfing lake and wakeboarding lake, and it's dangerous sometimes. That you really have to pay attention because some of these wake surfers, I mean, they're throwing out a wake that's 3 feet high, and
Oh wow.
you don't want to be running the lake at 60 miles an hour and hit a 3-foot wake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and so
You didn't see
when you're
kayaks
running the lake, you almost have to shut. You pretty much go down to an idle speed, to get over those wakes. And those wakeboard boats are just getting bigger. I mean, they're just getting bigger. So it's, you got to want to be out there. And what's great about now is, those guys are putting their boats up, until, February, March. And so, we get the lake back to ourselves, and that, that's the good stuff.
So crazy you say that.
Oh yeah, because you get the ice and everything.
So I live in New York and New Jersey, so it doesn't get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we don't. There's no boat talk until, like, I'm a nut. I get my kayak out in like May.
Oh yeah. I mean,
it's so cold.
We play. I mean, I fish every week pretty much, and we never have to winterize our boats because we're always using them. So I wouldn't know what to do to winterize a boat. I have no idea. Because we're using them.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with. I mean, we play golf all year round, so it's not a big deal. So
that's it.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, is there ever like a point to where you're like, I can't fish like offshore because of these wakeboarders? Because they're like all over the place?
Yeah. I mean, there's times that you just go, okay, it's yours, but there are areas of the lake that you can run way up to the upper end of the lake where they never come because, and I just found this out this last weekend, is the wakeboarders need for the best wakes, they've got to have 12 feet or more water.
Okay.
So they got to have that volume of water to create those big wakes. And once you run way up the lake, there's areas up there where it's only 8 feet deep, down to 2 or 3 feet, and you got to know where the river channel is, and you can get up on plane and run pretty fast, and go up there and fish the areas up there, and usually that area turns on in the kind of November timeframe. So I mean, some of the best days I ever had we're up there in late October, November. So I mean, I got different parts of the lake that I go to at different times of year. So yeah, it could be really good coming up here.
Man. Texas Huntsman is saying Jermaine will be booking a flight to Texas tomorrow.
No, I mean, and I've taken guys out, before. Had some guys come down from Wisconsin, had some guys from Virginia, because people will come down to Austin for, some of the music festivals and stuff like that. What is it? Not Austin City Limits is going on. There's another big festival that's going on right now. Where there'll be 100,000 people on Town Lake, which is also called Ladybird Lake, which is the next lake down from Lake Austin. Okay. So if you watch like the homeless fishermen and stuff like that, and sometimes Jared Swafford, I mean, they're out fishing off of paddleboards.
I do that.
So they're fishing on Town Lake, which is the next lake down, and it's got some really big fish in it. And when I fish Town Lake, a lot of times I'll grab my kind of my hydrilla stuff, which is 65-pound braid, and I throw a spoon and fluke combo, so a 1 ounce spoon and a 7.5 inch zoom fluke. So I mean, it's a bait. I mean, it's still a big bait. It's not that big.
Yeah.
But, where guys are throwing jigs and worms, I throw that spoon fluke because it'll get through any grass. And
really,
I don't know what it imitates. I guess it's either a shad or a bluegill or something. But I mean, it's a crazy bait. You're going, why in the world are they biting this thing? But they sure do.
Yeah. So how does that, how do you attach the fluke to the spoon? Is it just like a split ring to the hook?
With a beast hook. I mean, you take the treble hook off the spoon and you put a beast hook on it.
Okay.
And what's really cool about it is the spoon and the fluke fold up, and the deepest, thickest grass.
Really?
You can drop that thing right through it. We call it a slither rig because it goes down and then it kind of flutters on the way down. Because around here, I mean, Lake Austin used to be a hydrilla lake until they released all the grass carp, and the grass carp ate everything, and that was a big problem. That ruined the fishing it's still bad, but it really ruined the fishing for like 6 or 7 years. But before that, it was a grass lake. And prior to me throwing big baits, that's all I did was I dropped baits in the grass. I would get in the nastiest stuff. And for years, I never casted because I was just pitching, and every hook set was straight up and down.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a rush too of sticking a 10-pound fish, right down below you.
Wow.
That's fun.
But yeah, and again, I mean, that was a big bait technique too. So, kind of the move over to, swim baits wasn't that big of a jump.
Yeah.
You said that the lake down from you has really big fish. What's really big fish to you?
I mean, my goal is to catch one over 13. I've seen them. I saw a fish that was probably every bit of 18 pounds. I was on the lake fishing when the guy caught the lake record, which is 16.5.
Okay.
I caught a 10, I think, about a year ago on the Battle Shad in an area where a bunch of crappie hang out. And under that same dock, about 15 years ago, a guy caught a 14.5 on a Skanko underneath that dock. But what happened when the grass carp ate all the hydrilla was the forage fish didn't have any place to hide anymore, and so the whole food chain got screwed up.
Yeah,
and it's taken a while. I mean, you'd go, we went probably 2 years, and I'd never see a perch or swimming around. But we're now seeing a lot of balls of shad, and we used to have a lot of white bass. There's still a few white bass in here, but so if you're gonna target big fish down here, you need to target. You're throwing shad patterns. And I used to only throw like I've caught a whole bunch of fish on the depths 250. I mean, that was my deal, was throwing that bait. And I mean, like I said, there's no trout here, but I mean, I caught a ton of fish on the 250. It was funny. I got one out of Japan, I think, or I mean, the first one that I got the bluegill pattern.
Okay.
And really good bait, because I saw a picture of again, a Butch Brown picture of him showing the fish that he caught on the bluegill 250. And so I messaged him on this random Castaic Lake internet site and thinking, oh, hey, well, he'll never respond. And so I'm going into my staff meeting. This is like in 2012 or something, 12 to 13 maybe. And I'm looking at my phone and I get a phone call and it's from California. And I go, man, who do I know in California? So I'm going into my staff meeting on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. And the guy, I answered, he goes, oh, this is Butch Brown. And I'm going, oh my God. So, I talked to him for a while. And so I sent him some baits and he tuned some baits for me. And so I had 250s that I could throw on the surface, mid-level, and then some kind of fast sinking ones. And so I could hit all the water columns. And so that became my go-to bait for a long time, was throwing that 250. And that you're not going to, and around here, there's a bunch of osprey. So every time I cast, I'm looking at the sky, because I've had osprey come down and try to take the bait away. And if there's one thing I never want to do is hook one of those guys.
Yeah, that's not gonna be fun.
I think Matt Allen hooked one with a HUD or something, and it hooked it, like the thing was just grabbing onto the HUD and it didn't get any hooks in it, and it took him through like multiple trees. It was crazy. That would be horrible.
I'm pretty sure Justin Royal hooked a heron. Like, he cast it and the heron flew right into it.
Oh man! And
he got it loose too.
Yeah, I had a heron. I was running up the lake, and I made a blooper reel that's on my YouTube channel. And I'm running up the lake, probably 50 miles an hour, and out of my right vision, I see a blue heron take off, and he is coming. They fly low against the water sometimes, and we're on a collision course. And he sees me just in time to flare his wings out, and he goes right over my head. And it was pretty cool on the GoPro. I mean, it wouldn't have been cool if I hit him, but if you're on the water enough, everybody's got wildlife stuff that happen.
Yeah. Inevitable.
What is that? The name of the spoon that you like to do that fluke rig? Because I want to try that now.
I'll send you. I call it. So get a 1 ounce. Some people call them CC spoons. It's the hammered metal spoon. It's the very basic. And so you've got a split ring on top, and then you got a split ring on the bottom where the treble hook is. So take the treble hook off, add another split ring to the bottom. So you got one split ring to tie to. You got 2 split rings at the bottom, and then get an 8/0 beast hook.
Okay.
And you can use a smaller one. You could use a 6 if you're going to use like a 5 or 6 inch fluke. But I use the big fluke, the 7.5 inch zoom fluke. I mean, you could use like a Kitech or something like that if you wanted to. And then if you've got grass, I mean, in Georgia, man, that would be.
That's what I'm thinking right now.
Drop it in lily pads. Drop it in milfoil. And what happens with those things, and if for people that fish in the grass, because I did it for so long, there's a video that was made a long time ago called Big Bass in the Grass, and Terry Oldham put it out. And Terry Oldham was a guy that
Okay.
kind of invented, he had kind of invented the big fishing for big bass in the hydrilla, and he would fish mainly Lake Falcon. And so he came, and Waterloo rods makes what's called a scrape rod, and scrape comes from the term that the fishermen would use when you would flip in and catch a fish. You'd always have your buddy flip in the same spot, because a lot of times there's a pod of fish down there. So
Yeah.
it became calling it a scrape. And so
Okay.
whenever you would hook a very aggressive fish, it's like, get in there, because there's going to be another one. And there's times that you could catch 5 or 6 fish out of a spot that's as big as like a Home Depot bucket, because they're down there in that one spot. And the other thing about the grass, especially the hydrilla, is it'll grow in 20 feet of water, but they'll be 8 feet clear down below it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It tops out, but there's highways underneath it. So, you fish those areas like there's no grass at all, because you're fishing the drains and the channels and, the highways that the fish are on. And, people are always, well, I'm throwing the pockets in the mat. Well, yeah, you can do that just because you can get it through there, but you're really fishing the same contours that, you would fish if there was no grass at all. So.
Okay. That's very interesting. Jermaine, you want to hit on some questions real quick here from the viewers?
Yeah.
I think I got a few started right over here. If we want to hit on those real quick.
Yeah.
Let's see. Got one from Matt.
Yeah, Matt's got a good one.
So Matt, South Jersey Bait Reviews here, says, Alan, how is fishing with Oliver Nye? I know you and him have fished together a few times. Anything you taught him, or even anything you learned from him?
Yeah, I mean, I fished with Oliver. It was kind of funny, and that's back when not a whole lot of people were throwing big baits around here. And somebody called me up and he goes, "Hey man, there's a guy from California down at the boat ramp," and he said he broke his axle or something at the boat ramp. And sure enough, it was Oliver, and I think some guys helped him out. And that first Big Bass Dreams video that he put out, there's a number of Lake Austin fish on there, and I think even on his second video. And so I went out with him once. We fished Town Lake, and he had been fishing down there a whole bunch on the very lower end of Town Lake. And when I'd fished Town Lake, I knew the upper end very well. So I thought, well, Oliver's been down there for, a few months now. I'll go fish with him, see if I can learn anything about the lower end. So he took me around to some spots that he'd been catching fish on. And, I was kind of telling him about, so I was kind of trading him information on Lake Austin and stuff. And I think we caught one fish that day. We only fished in the morning. And I caught a hud fish that was about 7.5 pounds. But it was one of those where the fish was right where it was supposed to be. We were sitting shallow. We were throwing deep, bringing up across of a bunch of boulders. And that's where that fish needed to be. And sure enough, I mean, it ticked, just real light tick. But, and a lot of times that's all you get. I mean, something's different, and you feel something different. And set the hook. I mean, it's a good fish. And the one thing that he taught me that I didn't know throwing the hud was, I don't know that this fish, I wasn't caught that way, but it's once you get stuck and you feel it come loose, pop it up. So get that hud, shooting up 5 or 6 feet, and then let it come down and start going again. Like something had chased it or something. But I mean, like I said, when I first started, when I the kind of the first, I mean, I'm not going to say that the Mega Bass Charlie wasn't a good bait, but when I got the hud, which was kind of my first really, serious swim bait. So I threw the HUD and the BBZ-1, and man, those were on my deck all the time. And so the BBZ was kind of my go-to hard bait, and the HUD was my go-to soft bait. And I mean, that's all I threw. And you know, I've had HUD fish on the bottom. I've had them hit on the top. And you know, back then you'd cut off the jig hook, or even then, like the ROF5 didn't even have a jig hook. I mean, you would either Butch Brown rig it and put a hook on the top, or you'd use the bait hanger or the hook hangers on the bottom. But on this lake, and they haven't done it in probably 7 or 8 years, but when it was a grass lake, every 2 years they'd lower the lake 12 feet. And that would expose the grass to the cold in January and February, and it would kill the grass. The cold would kill the grass. But when they'd lower the lake, all the homeowners would go out there and they would put down bottom protection. So they'd put down burlap, or they'd put down ripstop nylon, and then they'd weigh it down with bags of cement or concrete. And so there's certain parts of Lake Austin that you can't let your bait hit the bottom, because if your bait hits the bottom, you're not getting it back, because it's going to hook on that bottom protection. Take a treble hook and go, stick it in your gym bag and see if you can get it out. I mean, that's
the purpose of that?
Well, they put it down to keep the grass from growing up to their shoreline.
Oh,
they wanted it to be clear for swimming area, or they wanted to keep the grass away from their docks. And so, there's certain parts of the lake where you have to throw a weedless bait. Otherwise, I mean, you can rarely throw kind of a bottom crawling bait. So, I mean, I got I got pictures of so I mean, I've got all kinds of lure retrievers, and I've got boat hooks, and I've got extending poles and stuff like that. So there's been times that I've had to take a knife and duct tape it to the end of a boat hook and stick it down there so I could hold the bait with one hand and cut it away, cut the plastic away to get it back. I've had to do that a number of times. And it's that instant where you feel something and you set the hook and your rod bows up and then it doesn't move, and you're going, oh man, bottom protection. And it's like, you hope at one thing that it's clear enough that you can see, and then, you hope you can get your bait back. And I've been pretty lucky that I've been able to get, most of them back. But if I didn't have those tools, so I mean, as important as having a good swim bait rod and a good swim bait reel, you got to have a good lure retriever.
Yep. I love those ones by Toothy Fisherman. Those ones are my favorite so far. Yeah. They're pretty sweet.
Toothies are tough.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, what we have down here is gar, and gar, but they don't usually mess with your swim baits. But we don't have any of the other toothy fish.
We got pick.
You guys don't have gators out there.
We do, and they don't really, not really where I am. You got to go more East Texas, and you'll find them, or you go further south, or even west. And I mean, I lived in Florida for a little bit when the architecture business was really slow back in the late 80s, and I lived out there for 3 years, and so I would go fish the canals in the Everglades. And I walked. They didn't have pythons back there, which is really good, because I walked up on a bunch of gators, but I think I'd be more scared of a python than it would be a gator.
Yeah, I fish off of those paddle boards, and the gators don't mess with you. I've had like the big old, they're bigger than the paddle board. I mean, they just sit there. And if they get close when you have a fish on, you pop them with the paddle, and they usually get away.
I had them follow fish in Florida.
Oh, that's the worst.
Usually when they were having a drought or something, the water's down, because then the gators would all move to wherever the water was, out in the Everglades, fishing along the canals.
Yeah.
I can never. Yeah, that's a good one. I was going to ask that one. Do you have a bucket list of lakes?
I mean, it's not really a bucket list, but I got a buddy that's guiding out on Ivy now. And I mean, every year I say, man, I'm going to come out there and, go out there and throw some big baits out there.
Yeah.
I might do it this year. It's about a 5-hour drive from here, I think. So it'd be a
Oh, wow.
long day.
Yeah.
Driving real early and then fishing all day. And I haven't fished
That's a
Lake,
2-day
I
on
haven't,
my book.
but and that's everybody's live scoping out there and finding fish in 40 and 50 feet of water that are suspended and if it wasn't for forward facing sonar, I don't think those fish would have ever been found. I mean, because
Probably not.
why do how are you going to find fish out there without your electronics? And great. I mean, some people are making a business out of it, and certainly you have to find them and you have to make them bite.
Mhm.
I mean, no different than swim bait fishing, but I still think that and again, I've got it on my boat too. But I think if it wasn't for the electronics, I think that would have really been under the radar for a while longer anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how long that pattern lasts out there.
Mhm.
And what I'd say is, I think you're going to see like Lake Falcon come back. I've never fished Falcon. That would be a good lake place to go because it's been really low for a number of years, and they've had a huge shad spawn down there and a huge tilapia spawn. So there's tilapia everywhere. And I mean,
Okay.
a lot of bass eat tilapia. And if they can ever catch enough water to bring that lake up, I think it'll get back to the years of when they used the Bassmasters and those guys used to go down there and catch,
Mhm.
30 and 40 pound limits, pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So I think Falcon will come back. I've fished in Florida a number of times. Like I said, I fished in Mexico, and a lot of the lakes here in Texas. But it's hard for me to go somewhere when I know that I can leave my desk right here, hook my boat up, be down the lake in 10 minutes, and have a chance to
Yeah.
catch a 10-pound fish.
Yeah.
I'd be fishing in 30 minutes, from the time I turn the computer off. And
Yeah.
so I have a
That's dope.
hard time driving, 5 or 6 hours somewhere
Yeah. To go do what you can do in your backyard.
catching the same size fish, which is great. I mean, it's a fish of a lifetime. But then I can come back and hang around with the dogs at the house.
Yeah. It's definitely something special, But I mean, I'm sure like a lot of these lakes just have those like giant fish in them, and just people just don't like fish them very much, or they don't get any pressure, or people just don't know how to fish for some of these big fish, some of these lakes. Because I mean, there's big fish in some of these lakes that I fish that I've seen. Like I've seen a 12 pounder. I'm sure it's a 12 pounder. I've
Oh
seen
yeah,
it twice,
oh yeah.
like 100%, and I just can't catch the thing.
Well, and to me, it's most of us fish when we get the time to go.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It might not be the best time to be there, but it's when you can go. And
Yeah.
so that's got to, you got to get that alignment. I mean, you got to be there at the time the fish wants to eat. And,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how I look at it. And, I know at some point that fish is going to want to eat. And on this lake, the fish wolf pack around. And so the big fish will wolf pack around. The back in when was it? I got a bunch of old stuff here. What was that? 2013. It was So 10 years ago,
Okay.
I ran into a wolf pack of fish that was between 9 and 12 pounds.
Wow.
And in 2 hours, I had just shy, I caught 5 fish, just shy of 46 pounds. And the small one was 6'8".
Okay.
So I had a 10-10, 10-10 or 10-13. I forget. It was 10-10. 10-10, a 9-10, a 9-9, and a 9-9. And then the 6'8". And the 3 9s were on consecutive casts, casting to the
wow.
same spot, because I saw this pod of fish come up to hit the 250. And again, it looked like a pack of pit bulls that were rolling on this bait. And I mean, it was a real special time that I caught that fish. I unhooked him, measured him, put him in the live well, repositioned the boat, cast again, caught another one, did the thing again, retied, cast again, caught another one, cast again, miss it, cast again, miss it. And then, I said, okay, when I catch my 5th fish, I'm quitting. And to this day, I sit there and go, those 2 fish that I missed would have put me over 50 pounds, because I ended up like 4 pounds short of 50 pounds. Because the next morning, that was on a Saturday. The next morning, the Sunday, I go to the same spot, set my boat up the same way, I make a cast, and I caught a 12-7 in that same spot. So those fish were there. Those fish stayed there for about a month.
Oh,
and what they would do is they would move out to the middle of the lake, and they would come back to this creek mouth. And my buddy Ronnie and his brother, I told Ronnie where they were, and he went and fished that area, and they weren't there. And so Ronnie went out, and what I didn't know at the time is they went out to the middle of the lake. So Ronnie went out to the middle of the lake, and he and his brother caught a 9, an 11, and a 10, and another 9. They had like 42 pounds.
Oh, man.
And those fish stayed in that area. One guy caught, and this was a couple of weeks later, and I didn't say anything about that to it, except for a real small group of guys. But one guy was throwing an Alabama rig, and he caught an 11 and a 9 on the one cast.
That's insane.
But those fish stayed there, like I said, for about a month. And one buddy of mine was an electrician, and he was wrapping up a big job, and he quit like a month early so he could go sit on those fish. He quit his job to go out there and fish those fish. I mean, he was going to be starting a new job in a couple of months anyway, but he quit early to go fish those fish.
That's insane.
But so there are times on this lake, and it varies on the time of the year, where those fish wolf pack together for whatever reason. It's kind of like deer season just started here, but before the rut happens, you'll see those big bucks around here walking around together. I mean, big ones.
Yeah.
And then and then when the rut starts, you never see them together anymore.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason around here, man, those big fish, they'll gather up. And who knows? And you just get lucky. I mean, you're right there at the right place, right time, throwing the right bait. I mean, it could have been anybody. I mean, I was just lucky that day that I was there throwing a 10-inch bait. So,
wow, it's incredible.
Toledo Bend, yeah, go to Huxley Bay. When I used to fish Toledo Bend, Huxley Bay's on the Texas side, and it's about 3/4 of the way up north. Huxley Bay Marina is where we would fish out of. But man, Toledo Bend, and we used to fish it before GPS. The only map that you had was the one that was in a book. And, if you got out into that timber, so they cut boat lanes in the timber, but if you got into that timber and off the boat lane, all the trees look the same. But
Mm.
if you're in the boat lane, you see that lane going down. But man, once you get off that boat lane, it looks like just a sea of trees. But that's where I learned to jig fish, was at Toledo Bend.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a really good jig fishing lake, especially as it gets cold.
Interesting. So, all right, we got one more question, it looks like here, and then we should probably let you go because it's getting almost to an hour here.
Oh,
Dude,
okay.
this has been so much fun, dude.
Yeah.
I love hearing about this. This is like, I love taking it all in.
I got one more question for you.
Oh, you
bud.
bet.
Yeah. So, Alan, when it comes to the soft baits, what is the biggest key for you to get bites? And do you recommend larger sizes over the medium to smaller baits?
Yeah, we were talking about the new Citizen that came out.
Mhm.
I've thrown the 6-inch Citizen and I've thrown the 6-inch Battle Shad, and to me, they're too light. And
Mhm.
I know Keith in Florida. Keith throws the 6-inch Battle Shad kind of exclusively. I mean,
Mhm.
Mhm.
to me, it just isn't big enough because I have
Mhm.
enough confidence. But then, like the 9-inch Battle Shad, I look at that and go, "Damn, this is too big." But that 7-inch Citizen and the 7.5-inch Battle Shad, I mean, that's the sweet spot for me. And
Mhm.
I think part of it has to do with what you're throwing it on, what line you're throwing,
Yeah.
because the Citizen, the 7 and the 7.5 has enough weight to it that I get enough drape in my line that everything feels right. And a fish is going to hit it. I mean, they're going to hit that size bait. I mean, there's no question. So,
Yeah.
and if I've got, if I got two baits in front of me, I'm taking the bigger one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take, but I can remember way back where, a buddy of mine had, I mean, way back even before Senkos, and I mean, we threw rattle traps. I mean, everybody threw rattle traps. And the 3/4-inch rattle trap was kind of like the go-to bait. But then they had one that was like 1.5 ounces, which to me now is a little tiny bait. But that thing was huge. And it's like, what's going to hit this? Well, probably everything. So if I'd have known it back then, I'd have been throwing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just, you catch a few fish, you see a few followers, you get the confidence in the big bait, and then it opens up a whole new world of what's out there.
Yeah. Man, this is one I do like here because we have a lot of grass and pads.
Yeah.
And I fish the Citizen topwater. The 6-inch one is the one I like in the grass. But I take a big 7/0 EWG kind of style hook,
Yeah.
super line, and I just rig it just like you would with a beast hook. And dude, this thing will sit right there, and it gurgles like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
topwater bait.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it just goes right through the grass. And dude, I get so many bites on this thing. They're big ones too. Like you just watch a 5-pounder just come up and just smack the thing. It's just insane. But the 7-inch one, like it moves the mat like a lot, and sometimes it sinks down into it a little bit too much. So I mean, fishing on top of the grass, the Citizen 6 is my go-to. But if I'm fishing on like the bottom, the 7 is my go-to 100%.
Yeah. I'm friends with Mickey Ellis, the 316 bait guy, and his Rising Sun. You can throw the top hook Rising Sun and kind of do the same thing. It's a real good grass bait because you can pull it across the grass like a frog.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I'll throw a pink one.
Really?
Just because
Hmm.
people throw pink crickworms and get bit all the time, and pink
Yeah.
sluggos and things. So man,
Yeah.
that pink that pink Rising Sun, a 5-inch Rising Sun just across the grass.
Yeah.
And when I taught my sons how to fish, I had a lake. I had a client, architectural client, that had a piece of property with a couple lakes on it, that had timber, that had lily pads, that had grass. I mean, it had everything to teach people how to fish. And
That's
he had a
amazing.
couple little 2-man boats. And
Hmm.
so, I taught my sons how to throw every kind of bait there was, but kind of the favorite bait was throwing a pink trick worm with a little kink in it. You put it on, you
Hmm.
put a little kink in it, and throw a spinning rod over the top of the grass because they'd be twitching it across, and all of a sudden it would disappear.
Yeah.
They knew then, they had a fish. So,
Wow.
it's the same thing that colors don't bother me. I don't
Hmm.
fish too many black baits. I fish a
Hmm.
lot of the kind of I fish a lot of kind of
The shad.
the shad patterns and the kind of the realistic patterns.
Yeah.
But uh, have you ever seen a goldfish in a tank and a fish hit it? I mean, I'll throw an
Hmm.
orange bait. I mean, I'll throw an orange lure, an orange wet S waver, or
Hmm.
a reishi, an orange one. They'll hit those. So
Yeah. I mean, it's just matching the forage, unless you have super stained water. Like here, we have stained water. So, I mean, black is a great one for me anyway, for soft baits. I don't like it in hard baits as much, though,
yeah, and I used to fish
personally.
a lot at night. I don't do it that much anymore, just because I can, with my schedule, I can get away enough during the day that you know. But when I was trying to get in a bunch of hours fishing, and again, like I said, the wakeboard traffic was so bad. The only time that you could get out there would be at night,
Hmm.
and it's always funny at night, but the fish always feel bigger. You
Hmm.
know, every one of them, because
Yeah.
they always feel bigger. Um, but if you're a night guy, the slammer's a great night bait. I mean, because it's kind of the original wake bait.
Yeah.
Uh, and I know a lot of guys on the East Coast throw the slammers, and from watching videos and things, and going back to color, the strong red was always my go-to in the slammer. And I mean, I don't know what it looks
Okay.
like. I mean, what's red swimming around in the water? Who knows?
Yeah. A red glide bait, like a little fast red glide bait in the summer for some reason. It just smells like it's almost methylate color. I painted one up. It's kind of crazy how many fish you can catch on it. You won't catch any big ones, but you catch numbers.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I think it's just a reaction or something. It's like the floating worm. It's just weird,
Yeah.
something weird that they bite. But yeah, so Jermaine, you have any questions to end us on or
Yeah, one
anything?
last question. What were your
Okay.
favorite conventional baits?
Um, you know, the this is another one that people don't normally throw, but so I was at. Uh, I can remember when we first started fishing. Taking a worm and hooking it in the middle, and
Hmm.
I'm fishing Decker Lake with a buddy of mine out of his a little aluminum boat. And I read a story somewhere about this guy and his wife, and she didn't know how to hook a worm, and she hooked it in the middle, and she
Hmm.
started catching fish. And so I started doing that with a buddy of mine. He said, "What are you doing?" Because we always Texas rigging. Everything was Texas rigging. And so we got into sluggos, which were before the Senko, and then got into Senkos. But then I kind of found a Gary Yamamoto makes a grub,
Hmm.
but he makes a grub that's up to 10 inches long.
Whoa.
So it's a so in my favorite was the 8-inch Yamamoto grub. So it's the
Okay.
same plastic as the Senko, and it's as
Okay.
fat as the Senko, but it's got a ribbon tail. And
Okay.
so it shimmies when it goes down like a Senko does.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's got that real heavy salt, so it sinks. But that 8-inch one, you can throw it weightless on a 5/0 hook, and
Okay.
you can throw that thing anywhere. You don't need a weight. And I mean, uh, that was kind of my go-to soft plastic because nobody was throwing it. I mean,
Hmm.
people are throwing power worms and they're throwing, all kinds of different, branded worms, but nobody's throwing an 8-inch grub. So that's what I was always trying to
Yeah.
do is I want to do something a little bit different, but still kind of in the same area. The other thing, I was always like I said, a grass fisherman. So I was always throwing the Oldham's jigs and that slither rig that I talked about. And I was I'm trying to think of what kind of the top water bait. I mean, I don't remember too much about. I
It's
mean,
like a hula popper or something.
well, no, I mean it was the prop baits. The tiny
Okay.
torpedo.
Yeah.
It was. It's like if you had to catch a fish, if you absolutely had to catch a fish, you go out in the morning and throw a tiny torpedo, and there was no telling what you would catch.
Yeah.
If you're going to go for schooling fish or something like that, there's nothing better than throwing a prop bait. There's the tiny torpedo, and then they get bigger and bigger depending on. Oh, and then the Zara spook. I've got a couple spooks in my closet that are probably 10 inches long.
10 inches. That's a big one. It's almost like punker size there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. But it's that old cigar shape. So it's a walk the dog bait, just like a punker. Yeah.
Man, this is one that's always been good to me. The Devil's Horse.
Devil's Horse? Yeah.
Yeah, I love those things. There's something about them. You just like real nice, super slow. So they just like the blades are just barely turning, and you just see these fish coming out and just busting on it. You just catch tons of fish on them.
I took a buddy out who was from up north, and he shows up in my boat. He's got 2 spinning rods, and he's got a tackle box full of Devil's Horses. That's all he had. It's like, Sam, you got Devil's Horses.
That'll be good.
We caught them on Senkos back then, so
No Devil's Horse fish.
no Devil's Horse. I mean, it's a cool bait, but
yeah,
but I mean that was probably the extent of my go-to baits way back then.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Alan. This has been like super fun. I always enjoy like hearing about like stories about fishing and like tips and tricks and stuff. This has been awesome. So thank you, man. And is there anything you want to touch on before we head out?
No, I mean, if anybody wants to, run me down, get in contact with you guys, and he can send me my email information and stuff like that. If you're down here in Texas and want to go out, we'll go fishing.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. It's dope.
Yeah. So alrighty. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jermaine. Anything you want to add us on, Jermaine?
I'm all good. I'm going to fish tomorrow. I'm excited.
All right, sweet. Well, thank you guys so much for joining the stream. I left Alan's Instagram in the description below, so if you guys want to go follow him there. And also left your YouTube down there as well. So if you guys want to go see some cool fish catches, that's in there too. So thank you guys so much for coming on, and see you guys next week.
All right. See y'all.